First of all, I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to be on this panel. Thank you for having me here, Nick. Thrilled to tell my story. I do consider myself sort of the bridge between these two generations here. I'm Gen X. We get no love. Everyone knows the baby boomers and the millennials, and they're loud, and we're just kind of like, we matter too. We don't even have a name. We're Gen X. So the way I see, and I've been a political activist really all my life, and so I really see my role was I helped, along with thousands of others, shepherd us from the dark days of Stonewall to the bright days of Danica and Diane, and it's been really amazing watching that change. In fact, Don, I am going to write a book. I haven't written it yet, but it'll be called Bagels, Grits, and Quiche, Southern Gay Jewish American, so add a Jew to the mix on your joke, please. And I've actually I share a lot with all three of these people, actually, as I was listening to their stories, and I know Danica's story. Growing up, and it really is part of my triple identity, a Southern Jewish gay American. So one of the things I learned when I was 4 or 5 is that sometimes the whole world can be wrong, right? I was asked by the time I was 4 or 5, why don't you celebrate Christmas? And I had to have an answer, so at age 4 or 5. I remember my first protest. It was, again, I was 4 or 5. I had heard that cigarettes kill you, and so I took a carton of Kent cigarettes, and my mom's, and ripped up every single cigarette, threw it in the toilet. I've been trying to save lives ever since age 4. But it's one of the things my parents taught me, is that if everyone says you're wrong, check, make sure you're right, because, they may be right. They probably are. But if you're right and everyone's wrong, then you don't have to change them. And that's really how I've tried to live my life. And I knew when I was coming out as gay that I knew I was gay, and I knew the whole world was wrong. So if they weren't going to accept me, I was going to change the world until they did. And but I knew when I was growing up that I couldn't be gay and in politics. I had to make a choice. And I tried to live a double life for a while, and finally I'm like, no, I'm just going to have to change the world. So I came out. I've told my story before in other contexts, about hiding, and I actually went to Europe to try to come out there, and stumbled onto Gay Amsterdam, and that's a whole other story. But I remember the difference between the bars of the Stonewall days and the bars of today, because I actually traversed that time in distance, because in one weekend I went from Paris, France, where the bars were just like Stonewall. They were blackened, they were dark, there was a hole in the wall, there was a bouncer there and asked, and tried to check your identity before you went in. Very, very scary place that frankly scared me away. I didn't go there. And then I went to a couple countries over to Amsterdam, where there were gay bars next to straight bars. Everyone was singing and joyful and out in the open sun. Gay people, that's right, in the sun, hugging each other and singing stupid Dutch folk songs. And it was just, from pain to joy in a weekend. And really, Paris at that time was the past, and Amsterdam was the future. And I could almost see where it was going. And to this day, right, you go to the smaller towns in America, and there's the past, right? There's the dark bars. There's still, when I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. When I first came to Nashville, that was there, and but in Washington D.C. there was JR. It's very open, and so. But in terms of gay activism, I was in California. I actually got involved in some religious activism. In fact, a panel that I organized. So I was a member of the board of directors of the oldest gay synagogue in the United States, which is actually in Los Angeles, Beit Chaim Chadashim. And I organized a panel about history, because I've always loved history. And on that panel, I had the first conservative rabbi in America to agree to marry Jewish same-sex couples. That was my panel. And the first Orthodox gay rabbi ever. So I've been fighting within my synagogue like you've been fighting within your church. But also, it was near Hollywood, and my first protest was a march on Hollywood, That's right. Don't think of liberals marching on Hollywood. But I marched on Hollywood because there were no positive gay characters in the 1990s, early 1990s. And there was just like Soap and Billy Crystal and these very negative stereotypes. And we marched on Hollywood. We demanded positive stereotypes. And a couple years later, out came Will and Grace. That was part of that movement. But I still remember sitting with a Hollywood executive, talking with him, and he's like, I just don't think America's ready for this. And I'm like, you had African Americans in the 80s, and that didn't used to be on TV before. It was very popular, and you could show more of American life, and it won't just be gay people watching it. You'll get straight people watching it too. And then came Prop 22. So before Prop 8 in California was Prop 22. It was called the Knight Initiative, and that was a guy named Pete Knight who didn't really like his gay son or his gay brother, strange family dynamics, and actually put forward the bill in California to say that marriage is between a man and a woman. And that sort of began my activism. And I was on the No on 22 committee. There were only like 10 of us. And we had a fierce debate over strategy that I think, again, shows the fight between the old and the new. You see, the Knight Initiative basically said that a man and a woman couldn't get married, a man can only marry a woman. The same-sex couples couldn't get married. And that was already the law in California. That was already the law. So half of our group wanted to say, don't vote for this law, it's redundant. And the other, younger half, the more radical people like me, said, no, let's show them the reality of gay couples, lesbian couples. I said, let's start with a couple of women in their 80s and have been together for 50 years, show them they live and love each other, let's show gay couples with kids. And like, Mark, no, we can't do that. That's too radical. We've poll tested that, and the polls show that people aren't ready to accept same-sex couples. I said, well, they're not ready to accept us because they've never seen us. They don't know we exist. Let's show them. It's like, no, polls show that don't vote for this, it's redundant, is a better argument. And I said, look, we're not going to win this battle. I've seen the polls. We're going to lose. Whether we lose 62-38 or 65-35 or 60-40, let's lose so we can win another day. Let's show the reality of our lives so we can change people's minds, because we're not going to win anyway. So let's not fight over some legalism. People don't vote because something's redundant. I mean, no, they vote because they care. Anyway, there were 10 of us on the board, and I actually forced it to a vote, being difficult like I am, and we had a 6-4 vote. And 6 voted for the things that all the pollsters said. Don't vote for this, it's redundant. And 4 of us voted for my idea, which was to show the reality of our lives. And I said, I'm going to resign, if you don't vote my way. And they said, hi, Mark. So the 4 of us founded Marriage Equality California. And it's actually the second oldest marriage equality organization in the United States. New York beat us by a few months, so we weren't first, but we were second. And I actually wrote the very first, I was first on, I wrote the very first full marriage equality bill in the United States, both for state and federal rights. Vermont had state civil unions, but I wrote one for state and federal rights, even though the Defense of Marriage Act existed, and I knew, but I felt it was unconstitutional, and I felt we deserved full equality. And we took this into an openly, I don't know that I'll say her name, though if you push me, I'll say her name, but we went to an openly lesbian assemblywoman of California, and we took it to her, and like, we want you to introduce this, and I'm a California lawyer, we've written it all out, and she said, Mark, we're never going to see marriage equality in our lifetimes. So why don't you go out and help people with AIDS? That's a really good cause you should go work on. And I said, well, that's a great cause, but there's thousands of people working on that cause, and they're doing a good job. I want to work on this cause. And she said, well, you're dreaming. And I said, well, that's how things get started. And she wouldn't support the bill. And so no one in the California Assembly would support the bill. So I got involved in my first electoral campaign. And it was to get Paul Koretz elected, a straight guy who represented West Hollywood, but agreed to put my bill forward, the very first act, if we helped him win his tough Democratic primary. So that's how I got involved in my first campaign. And we helped Paul Koretz win. And he introduced that bill. And I was thrilled. I knew it would die, but I wanted to set the marker. We deserve full equality. So then a couple months later, Paul Koretz gives me a call on the phone, and he has this very sad tone to his voice. I'm like, Paul, what's wrong? He said, Mark, we have to pull your bill. What do you mean? What do you mean you made me a promise? What do you mean you have to pull my bill? He said, the Lambda Legal Defense Fund has asked me to pull your bill. I said, wait a minute, they're supposed to be supporting gay rights. Why would they? He's like, well, if you can get them to change their minds, I would, I agree with this. They think your bill's too radical, and they want to pull the bill. They have their own bill. Their bill provides hospital visitation to same-sex couples. I said, that's great. Their bill gives 6 rights under the code. Mine gives 2,000. So I have nothing wrong with their bill. Mine goes a little bit farther. Put my bill in, and it'll fail, but it'll actually help them. I'll be bad cop. They can be good cop, and their bill will pass. He said, you try to convince them. So I still remember having a very long, angry call with a woman at Lambda Legal Defense Fund. I've talked to her about this since then. It's been 15 years ago. But she, and they basically said, no, wasn't going to happen. And that's when I learned about the expression NIH, which doesn't mean National Institute of Health. It means not invented here. A lot of groups, even groups that are our friends, raise money off the good they do. And if some LA lawyer can write the bill for them, they're not going to be able to raise money off of that. And I said, you know what, take the bill. I won't mention it, I won't say my name on it, just take it. It's a really good bill. And he said, Mark, everyone knows you introduced this bill, you wrote this bill. So it's fascinating, because Lambda, of course, turned around. They hired Evan Wolfson a few years later. They became a real leader in this fight. But when I was involved, even the established community, and people just said, it's not going to happen. And then some young people said, well, marriage, we don't want marriage. We're the gay community. We define roles. And I said, that's great. You don't have to get married. I'm not forcing you. But it's something that many in our community do want, because there are rights and privileges. Anyway, fast forward, 10 years later, I was with Phil Mendelson writing DC's marriage equality law, redrafting that, and that became law. I defended it in court. And in the early O's, I worked for Congressman Barney Frank. I did his legislation, including legislation we're still fighting for, like the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, now called the Equality Act, hate crimes. One thing we did behind the scenes that was really fun is we managed to get benefits for survivors of same-sex couples where one was killed on 9/11. It was fascinating because the Bush administration didn't want people to know we were doing this because it would look bad to their right, but they didn't want to not do it because Barney basically said, I'm going to let everyone know how cruel you are to people on the left. So we made a deal. As long as they helped the people, we would tell no one about it. I think I can tell it now. But I kept this secret for about 15 years. And anyway, so, again, fast forward, it got to the point where we won and we changed society. And so I really feel like I've seen Don Davenport's days, maybe not quite that far back, but I remember, the fear and the concern, all the way up to mentoring my good friend Danica Rome, whom I met when she came and knocked on my door because I had a bill in Virginia that's a full Equality Act, and she came to tell me she supported it, and I said, hey, you want to testify? And so actually, it was for my bill. Danica was I believe, your first testimony in Richmond. That wasn't. Oh, they wouldn't let you. That's right. They wouldn't let you. But we were going to. That's right. They wouldn't let you. Anyway, I'm thrilled. I try to remind people, Danica and Diane's age and younger, that we have come a long way. I think it's important to remember how far we've come. I think it is a lot easier today. Our battles aren't won yet. We have a ways to go, but we have come a long way since Stonewall, and I was proud to be part of that movement going forward. So thank you for that.